Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, the legendary celebration following Lindbergh's successful flight across the Atlantic. Plus, cutting-edge technology at Mercy, how this science helps cancer patients. And then teaching young girls to see career possibilities in STEM. But first, a photographer using her lens to celebrate inner beauty and individuality. It's Sunday, and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
My name is Elizabeth Reichardt, and I am a photographer, speaker, and educator. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in 3rd grade. My teacher had noticed I had a really hard time, sitting still in my classroom, not shouting out answers instead of raising my hand, things like that. And that combined with the fact that I was, in the gifted classes, made it really hard for a lot of teachers to understand, what kind of box to put me in. She was able to help me learn skills to self-regulate. That really helped me develop what I understand now as the social model of disability, which is you want to fix the environment that people are in. You don't need to fix people themselves. There's nothing broken inside of people. It's really about the environment that people are in. That was the basis of me learning my self-advocacy skills, and that led to me being able to advocate as an adult for my needs as a photographer who uses a wheelchair. And it all stems back to that 3rd grade teacher. I use a wheelchair because of a couple different things. I have a neurological condition called dysautonomia, and I have an immune condition called mast cell activation syndrome. And these two things work together really well to not want me to be on my feet that much. My wheelchair doesn't hinder me. My wheelchair is my freedom. I went from being homebound virtually to staying months at a time across the country. And I think a lot of people will tell you that their wheelchair is what gives them their freedom. I've always loved photography, and I've always loved art in general, but never had quite the fine motor skills to draw or paint, but I always loved taking pictures. When I was stuck at home for a while because I was sick, I got bored because I wasn't doing anything. So I decided I wanted to learn photography, really learn it. And I learned all my cats. Then I started feeling a little better, and my friend invited me to a drag show in South St. Louis, and she said, bring your camera. So I attended my first drag show with my camera, and it was incredible. And that's how I learned a lot of my photography skills in performances and events. And that summer, I just spent the entire summer photographing drag shows. After that, I started working on my own company, and I realized what a need there was for representation in the photography community. And I love taking photos of disability. I love disability in general. I think my community is kind of amazing. I think we are problem solvers, and we are tenacious, and we are creative, and I love photographing that. So basically, two of my loves just came together, and that's what I do now. I do a lot of disability portraiture, and I love to photograph dance and concerts and all kinds of live events. I like capturing moments that could never happen again. That's what I think is so exciting about performance photography, is that moment, no matter what you do, will never happen again. And I think that's really exciting. So in 2019, I made the decision that I was going to photograph the 2024 Paris Paralympics. That was my goal. I reached out to anyone I could think of to try to get in touch with the right person, and eventually I did. And I heard back from somebody saying, your name was passed to a person to me. and we'd like to hire you to be a photographer. And that's like my biggest advice to other photographers, other creatives, is you have to make them tell you yes. They will not come to you. You have to go to them. You have to be willing to get that 100 no's, because eventually you'll find the right person and they will tell you yes. In September 2023, I was photographing New York Fashion Week, and I am certainly one of the first people in a wheelchair to shoot New York Fashion Week. And when you go to these events, you might have seen photos of photographers at them before. They are very squished together. There is not much space, and you have to fight for the space that you get. And I had to fight for the space in my own wheelchair. So I had to measure my wheelchair, and I had that square that I had to stay in. And then once I was there, I have to be able to advocate for myself. I have to be able to let people know that they are in my space, let people know that they are in my shot. This happens in concerts too. You have to be able to use your voice. And I had to learn to be more aggressive and be louder and know that it's okay to use my voice for myself as well. My goal is always to capture and show my subjects as they want to be shown. When you have a disability, you frequently have a spotlight put on you that's chosen by society, and society gets to decide how you're going to be seen by them. And my goal with my photography is to show my subjects as they want to be seen, whether that's as super confident or super trendy and fashionable or whatever it might be. To be seen the way you want to be seen is a right that many people have taken away from them. And the confidence that can bring back is incredible. And it's the best compliment in the world when somebody says that it's the first time they've really seen themselves in my photos. It's the best feeling.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Mid-America Emmys, Tellys, NATOAs, Auroras, and other awards. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Hundreds of nominations and wins, from regional to international levels. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries. Individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Plus so much more. And although doing good work is its own reward, recognition, well, it's nice too. See what all the fuss is about. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. Charles Lindbergh made history with a daring solo flight across the Atlantic in 1927, leading to one of the biggest celebrations that St. Louis has ever seen. Public historian Adam Clappy shares how this event left an indelible mark on both Lindbergh and the River City.
When St. Louisans opened their newspapers on the evening of Saturday, May 21st, 1927, they must have felt like their world just got a little smaller. What screamed at them from the headlines that evening was that Charles Lindbergh had just completed a solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean, a feat that many people thought so difficult as to essentially be impossible. But Lindbergh had done it. He had shown that aviation could be used to bring different parts of the globe a little bit closer together. The world celebrated, but perhaps no city celebrated Lindbergh's incredible feat quite like St. Louis. You see, Lindbergh had deep ties to the River City. He had barnstormed in and around St. Louis for several years, showing off some of the amazing capabilities of aircraft, sometimes for people that had never even seen a plane before. He had also flown a dangerous airmail route between St. Louis and Chicago for some time, linking the two biggest cities in the region through the air. In other words, any St. Louisan that had ever had any interest in airplanes was probably familiar with Lindbergh. That's how he came into contact with the St. Louis businessmen who financed his flight, and that's why he named his famous airplane the Spirit of St. Louis. On June 18, 1927, about a month after his historic flight, Lindbergh returned to St. Louis for the first time. In response, the city of St. Louis threw one of the biggest celebrations this city has ever seen in honor of Lindbergh. That day, over 500,000 people crowded onto the streets of St. Louis to witness a parade in Lindbergh's honor and to see the man himself. He also attended several banquets and other events that day, but everywhere he went, he was toasted, celebrated, and honored. The next day, Lindbergh was scheduled to give a speech on Art Hill, and over 100,000 St. Louisans jammed into Forest Park to hear him speak. But before he spoke, he flew over the crowd in his famous plane, dipping his wings in gratitude for all the city had done for him. When he landed, he spoke to them about the importance of aviation and how St. Louis could take a leading role in the aviation industry. He then laid a wreath at the foot of the statue of St. Louis at the top of Art Hill to show his thanks. And he meant it. These St. Louis celebrations were special to him. Lindbergh had had parades thrown in his honor for a month, toasted in London and Paris and Washington and New York. But he told the papers that the St. Louis crowds were, quote, the most enthusiastic I have seen since Paris. It was 100% wonderful, end quote. I'm sure the crowds thought the same.
Next week on History Spotlight, a look at the history of Soldiers Memorial and Memorial Plaza.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org. For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel, Spotlight STL from HEC Media.
When Mercy was awarded a proton beam, we were so excited, particularly for our patients, particularly in the research space, to offer those patients something that they would not have otherwise had. I'm Joanne Levy, and I am privileged to serve as Vice President of Mercy Research here at Mercy. This opens a whole new area of therapy that is already approved for our patients, but the research opportunities.
Very cutting edge phase 1, phase 2 trials where we're looking at new indications for proton therapy, novel ideas coming forth with proton therapy for folks who cannot remove a tumor surgically, patients that have failed other traditional means of cancer treatments. Promise of proton therapy is that we can be more precise in targeting the actual tumor. There are different types of tumor types where you might need a bit more scatter radiation than a very focused tumor. So if you have a tumor in a breast and we don't have mets anywhere else and tumor burden is pretty low, really target that one tumor in the breast and preserve breast tissue and not have to undergo a mastectomy. Protons are positively charged particles. They are very precise in terms of tumor targeting. They're not going to go through the tumor. They're not going to go beside the tumor. They're going directly to that tumor and are destroying that tumor DNA. It preserves a healthy tissue around that tumor for our patients. We believe, and the science is showing, that these patients have better survival outcomes, have less health problems later down the road.
We have immediate opportunities, research studies through the NCI, the National Cancer Institute. Given that there are only 43 proton beams across the United States, the opportunity to do research is very limited. It's also extremely expensive therapy. What Mercy decided to do was to join the Proton Beam Collaborative Group. And this is a group of over 30 proton beam centers that have joined together and are gathering data and engaging in research collaboratively to increase our understanding of what proton beam therapy can do for the patients that we all serve. Through the Proton Beam Collaborative Group, we have immediate access to a data registry. So any patients receiving proton beam therapy at Mercy and these other 30+ systems can enter data into an overall national registry that gathers data about those patients, their conditions, their reactions, and it allows us to do research in the future using the data that's been gathered through the registry.
It really is a diamond mine of data. It gives us access to over 40,000 patients' data. For us to do that alone at Mercy would take years.
What will next happen relatively quickly will be access to clinical trials that the Proton Beam Collaborative Group is sponsoring that will open up opportunities for patients to participate in proton beam in cancers that are other than the ones that are approved today. So we will see expanded opportunities for proton beam therapy in a research setting in breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, so that the entire industry can learn and understand better what proton beam therapy is capable, the value it's capable of bringing to patients.
Later on Spotlight, how the zoo works to save endangered species and their habitats.
I started Black Girls to STEM because I was really noticing a gap specifically in the region in gender equity as it related to STEM of Black girls that was really coming from public schools, inner city, St. Louis, and other majority African American districts. I am a research and development chemist by background, education, and training.
As a child, Cynthia Chappell was strong in math and science, but it was a chance encounter that gave her the confidence to see that talent as a potential career.
I didn't actually meet a Black woman in STEM until I was like a sophomore in high school, and she was an engineer who worked for NASA. And so I think it was very much an impression of like, oh, okay, maybe I can do science.
After getting her master's degree and working in the private sector, Cynthia forged a new path by creating Black Girls Do STEM.
Black Girls Do STEM! The goal of Black Girls Do STEM is really like to get to a point where Black women have equitable representation across all STEM fields. As much as we want to trigger curiosity in our young girls for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics and build their confidence in their STEM capabilities and their own skill sets, we want to take, again, that integrated approach, that multidisciplinary approach to make sure that kids understand like how career pathways and skills can track across so many different areas that they may or may not be interested in.
Through workshops like this, middle school girls can see career possibilities and hear from mentors in various STEM fields. This session ends with a challenge project, Build a Levee Design.
Material you like, whatever you have on your budget is what you're gonna use.
If you put water on cardboard, it's gonna like, not dissolve, but it's like not gonna work. So if you put the popsicle sticks on it and then put the tape around it, it might work. I don't know.
So at Black Girls Do STEM, we really want girls to embody a sense of joy in the process of discovery, right? Joy in the process of being challenged. And I feel like that's why I love being a scientist.
Here, the girls learn life lessons like persistence and growth mentality.
Yep, this is it.
It held at first. So when you write your results down, what could you use more of?
It helps me solve problems. One experiment we did with balloons, it didn't work out the first time, so we had to do it again.
Black Girls Do STEM is really truly a grassroots organization. We really move and shape our programming and our offering based on what parents and students and community stakeholders are telling us they need.
I want to design things when I get older, like buildings. The last class we did 3D printing, and I like that because it's creative and I like to make different things out of different things.
Once our girls exit our middle school strategy or our Saturday Academy, they sort of age automatically into our high school support services, which is math and science tutoring, as we advocate for them to take 3 years of math and science as high school students, ACT preparation, post-secondary planning focused on scholarship and college access, as well as direct to the workforce pathway. And so I think that's what we want the experience for girls in the program to be. Building real confidence in their critical thinking ability. Being okay with failing and starting over, like fail fast, get back up, let's rethink it. We do so much design and redesign, test and retest, because that's the process of learning, and that's how you sharpen your skills and sharpen your mind.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
Zoos are places of wonder, enabling humans to observe and connect with some of the most unusual species in the world. This face-to-face experience is meant to educate and inspire the public to value and protect the incredible animals they share the planet with. But for the keepers and curators, caring for the zoo's animals is only part of their job.
I'm very proud to say that zoos really do include in their mission as a central part the wildlife conservation in tandem with animal well-being and animal care.
Most of us, get into biology or get into the animal care field because we want to make a difference. We want to do good by the world and the natural spaces in it.
St. Louis Zoo, they were ahead of their time. I mean, they were doing this work late 1980s. And in fact, it was such a commitment that the curators formally have a quarter of their time dedicated to wildlife conservation centers.
In 2004, the St. Louis Zoo made its commitment to field conservation official by establishing the Wild Care Institute. With 16 centers and 13 programs based all over the world, the Institute works in tandem with other conservation organizations and, most importantly, the local community where the centers are based.
From the beginning, we've been cognizant that this is not only about wildlife, but also about people.
The Wild Care Institute Center for Conservation in the Horn of Africa partners with the Grevy Zebra Trust to not only preserve a critically endangered species, but also to educate and enable the people there to manage their conservation and continue research.
It was really inspiring to see. One of the things that we support over there is women working to restore and protect the grasslands to increase grazing opportunities for the zebra. One of the main reasons their population is in decline is grazing competition from livestock and human encroachment. So they are out there growing grassland and trying to help give them more grazing opportunities.
Every 2 years, staff from the St. Louis Zoo join others to travel to Kenya to participate in an intense census-taking effort called the Great Grevy Rally, which helps the locals gather information on how the Grevy zebra population is doing.
So during the rally, we go out in the field and we take pictures of the zebra's right side. Every zebra has a unique stripe pattern, so that is how we are able to identify them. When all the pictures are compiled, they will be put into a computer program where they can recognize their unique stripe patterns, and we'll do a census from those photos. The Wild Care Institute supported us going over to Kenya and doing the Grevy Rally, so people coming to the zoo and supporting the zoo supports that, which supports the conservation work going on over there.
But the Wild Care Institute also has centers much closer to home, like the one working to reintroduce the American burying beetle back into the state of Missouri and beyond. Once native to at least 35 states, as well as parts of Canada, the American burying beetle is a scavenger that depends on the meat of dead animals to survive. To bolster the dwindling population, the St. Louis Zoo has been breeding pairs for introduction back into the wild, providing the happy couple with dirt and a dead quail. The beetles create tunnels where they hide the food source and lay their eggs. Curator Kayla Garcia gave us a peek at one of the adults and into their unusual methods of breeding and raising young.
These beetles are really interesting because they're one of the few insect species that actually exhibit what we call biparental care. The babies, when they hatch, they're little grubs, kind of beg for food from the parents. They kind of make these little noises, and they both work together to keep their babies well fed. With that quail, they actually are able to preserve it with these special secretions that they produce to keep it from getting too rotten. Then once they get big enough that they start to crawl away, that's when mom and dad can kind of leave.
Beetles raised at the zoo are taken to a habitat in southwest Missouri, where a team, including Kayla, provides an initial food source and protection against fellow scavengers so they can raise young without interference.
These beetles do play a really important role in recycling nutrients. They're able to return minerals that are from decomposing animals back into the soil. I've always had like a particular fondness for our native wildlife, but what I find is that a lot of people don't necessarily realize just the diversity of life and the amazing animals that we have like in our own backyards.
Another North American Wild Care Institute center isn't actually located in North America, but in the Marianas Islands, which include the U.S. territory of Guam.
The St. Louis Zoo has been a long-time contributor to conservation of bird species in this region of the world. So Guam is the kind of big island in a chain of islands where the brown tree snake was accidentally introduced during World War II. The brown tree snake is kind of sneaky. It's nocturnal and they're arboreal, so they're climbing around in trees, but they're hiding a lot during the day. So it took a little time to realize that the snake was the issue that was kind of causing the population decline in the forest bird species on Guam. So it was biologically one of the most devastating ecological disasters. U.S. Fish and Wildlife decided that they needed to step in quickly to help preserve the species of Guam.
The Guam kingfisher was one of the first to receive focus. After capture, they were taken to several locations all over the world, including the St. Louis Zoo, and put into human care where they thrived. Now, decades later, there's a plan in motion to release some of that population back into the wild, but definitely not on Guam.
So unfortunately, the island of Guam is not yet safe for release there because the brown tree snake is still present. But it's really exciting to hopefully envision a future where they'll be out in the wild again at least, and no longer extinct in the wild, which is their current status.
And in case the brown tree snake is able to covertly hitch a ride to one of the neighboring islands like Saipan or Rota, another bird-saving technique is employed. This involves studying the various species patterns and territories, setting up nets to gently capture them, a short period of veterinary observation, and then translocation to another island in the chain, where they are released back into the wild. A top priority is providing the island community with ways to connect and assist with these conservation efforts.
We have field trips coming out to our field sites. We're getting to show students that maybe have never had an opportunity to be in their native forests, see their native species in hand, and really help make that community connection that is so critical.
So, besides supporting the zoo, what can the average St. Louisan do to help with these global conservation efforts?
Reduce, reuse, recycle. What you do with your garbage makes a tremendous impact on animals in the wild. Even just being cognizant about your energy. Climate change is imperiling so many species, but also policy, making sure that you vote for what's right for wildlife in the world.
And for zoo staff like Kayla, Jen, and Amanda, who get to be boots on the ground in the fight to protect and preserve wildlife, it's another way to share their own wonder and passion for animals, whether in the field or here at home.
To be physically engaged in conservation in this way is super fulfilling for me. Holding an endangered species in my hand and knowing I am directly contributing to the potential success of this conservation project is amazing.
Next week, the oldest running Memorial Day parade in the country, and it happens in Alton. Plus, a critical battle happened right here in St. Louis that helped save the American West. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.